What's up, guys? It's Toten Tons back with another KOL video. This time I'm going to cover how to use Mafia, KoLMafia to be exact. Not going to go over every little tiny detail, but I am going to show you how to download and install it and go over some of the basic scripts that I use when I use KoLMafia. So first things first, just open up your browser and you can either search for KoLMafia in Google, or I just go straight to builds.kolmafia.us, download the latest daily build, and you'll want to download the daily build at least once a week. If you don't get this little tiny Java icon when you go to download the jar file, then you need to install or update Java. Easiest way to do that is, again, search Java download. Make sure you're going to java.com or oracle.com, either way, and do the free Java download. If you don't have the correct version of Java, if you have like an old version, anything like that, you can have some weird stuff happen. But you just need the daily build. You can go to SourceForge and get an executable file that will install it for you. Don't need to do that. And then what you'll want to do once you get the jar file is just put it wherever you want to have KoLMafia. You can install it to a USB stick. You can install it on a hard disk. We could put it over here or over there. Basically, you can install it anywhere. But don't install it in a shared folder on your network. That's a bad idea. The reason being is, sure, you can access it from any device now, but it tends to run extremely slow with things like searching the mall for purchases and stuff like that. So if you notice that your installation is dragging, anytime that you try to like search the mall, if you're trying to run your mood, stuff like that, double check to make sure you're not running it from a shared folder on the network. I would strongly advise, if you want to be able to use it on multiple devices, to just install it on a little USB stick. So we have the jar file. Double click it to run it for the first time, and you'll see it's going to create all these little folders. And then you'll see the little pop-up here, and you'll get this little preferences window showing up for the first time, and this is going to allow you to configure it the way you want it to be. Important thing to note is, once you have KoLMafia installed, you will not be going to www.kingdomofloathing.com in your browser and logging in there. Instead, you will be logging in here. Now, before we do the login, let's go ahead and do a few little configurations here. So this preferences window, it's going to note that you're not logged in. The relay browser is going to be your main point of interacting with Kingdom of Loathing. And there's a lot of different options here. So we have show blatant spoilers for choices and puzzles. Basically, that's going to show you what things will do when you have choice adventures, stuff like that. It's also going to give you a few different options to solve things for you. Then you have other things here like warn if you're about to adventure somewhere, which contains common adventures you were unprepared for, blah, blah, blah. Allow network devices to access relay browser. That's like if you want to access it over a network connection, things like that. So the main thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and check to show blatant spoilers. And then we're going to go ahead and warn if we're about to adventure somewhere we shouldn't. Add quick script links to the menu bar. And that's for, like in fight, you'll have buttons to run a script, which we'll get into that in just a little bit. You can have HP MP restore links to the left side pane, so when you see your character panel and you can see your HP and your MP, it becomes a clickable link you can click on to restore. And then some of these other things can help as well. If you need like run moods before manual adventures, we'll want to do that. You can use maintain health and mana, but we're going to use a different thing for that, so we don't need to check that. And then we'll just want to go ahead and trim zap list to only known zappable items, hide junk and overpriced items in PC stores, provide hints, and you can change the color if you want here. And then we have automation, which we'll want to get into in just a little bit here, but we're going to need to install some things first before we do that. Let's go back to the general area here and just double check. If you have a chateau, you may want to choose that as resting before resting at your dwelling. Here, cast buffs not defined in moods during buff balancing. That's going to basically keep your mood balanced by casting buffs, and it can do stuff that you have active but isn't in your mood, but it's cheap to keep active, things like that. I keep that unchecked just because sometimes I run into situations where I think I have enough MP to do something like cast Disintegrate once I start a combat, but the buff balancer will use some of it to balance buffs, and then I'll end up not actually having as much as I needed. Alright, so then we'll go ahead and share recent mall price data with other users. If you have a mall store, you may want to do that. Item acquisition. We want to prevent accidental destruction of memento items. Just to be safe. Protect against accidental 10-leaf clover usage. That's always a good one to keep checked. That one's checked by default usually. Buy items from NPC stores whenever needed. That way if you have something in your mood, we'll actually have to wait till we log in for that. Same for these. But that will help you with keeping your buffs going if there's something that you get from a store like hairspray or something like that. Let's go ahead and close that out and let's log in. And now we're going to get a couple other folders here that are created, and you should see in a moment here the relay browser open up here. There we go. Alright, so this is going to be your main interface now, and you'll see, like I was saying, these are now links that you can click to restore if you need to. We'll want to configure how to restore that stuff shortly here. So what we're going to do before we get too much further is let's look into which scripts we want to install. So go to the menu here and click Scripts and Script Manager. And this will bring up this handy dandy window. Manage is going to show the stuff you already have installed, and install is going to show you the things that are already in there for SVN. SVN is useful because it's going to help you keep the scripts up to date. Unlike, say, if you were to use Grease Monkey for some reason instead of Mafia, who knows why you would want to do that. Those scripts get out of date real fast. So there's a lot of stuff here to choose from. I'm going to just basically touch on what stuff I use. You can also get some scripts that aren't going to show up in here, like things that you have to download manually from the KoLMafia forums, for example. So we have a few standard ones that we'll want to get. One that I recommend is the OCD inventory control. That's very useful if you ascend quite often. That way you don't end up with a ton of junk in your inventory. That does take quite a bit of time to configure when you first get it. So basically just pick the script you want, hit right click and install script, and it will go through installing itself. And you can watch the CLI here and see what it's doing. You always have this graphical CLI, which means command line interface tab here. That's a good idea to watch for a lot of different things. So I always watch that whenever I'm running anything. Alright, so then we're going to look over here again. We have basically showing different categories of script here. So we have action category. If you have the detective badge or the precinct, you'll want to have that one. That can run basically your cases for you each day. And initially it'll take a while for you to get the badge fully upgraded, but that will also then grab the badge for you when you first start your new ascension. Manage stores can help you with managing your store. That's something that you can use. I don't really use that too often anymore. I just basically leave everything in my mall and let it sell. Universal recovery, that's a good one there. We're going to want to install that. And then eat drink is another one that can be helpful if you want to let that basically manage your diet for you. I use that sometimes in aftercore. Wouldn't recommend using that in run. You definitely can, but I don't. I prefer to manage my food myself. So let's go back up to the adventure tab and just check a couple things here. So we do have the Nemesis script that automates the Nemesis quest. Best to run that in aftercore. So if you have enough turns after you break the prism, you can use that to do the Nemesis quest. It's a little bit configurable. Like you can configure where you farm while you're waiting for the assassins and that kind of thing. Then there's the C that automates the C. There's a few things that actually takes quite a bit of configuration to get it working just right the way you want it. But that can be very helpful too if you aren't able to do the C very quickly on your own. So that's something I also recommend. And then there's Bum Cheek Ascend, which automatically scripts an entire ascension. It takes a little bit of configuration, but it does work pretty well. I wouldn't use it for like if you're using as it even notes here, a muscle or a mysticality class. You can basically use it to run most of the ascension, but it is going to need some attention throughout the run. I just do them myself when I'm trying to go for fast runs. Okay, so let's go down to information, and this is going to have some nice stuff here. The guide, Azendora's guide, that's one we definitely want. I like to keep that open most of the time during my run. And then we got the snapshot maker right here. That gives you your little snapshot on the website for the cheese cookies website. And I install that and I have it run once I break the prism upon ascension. It's kind of nice for helping you track your character. And there's a few other ones there in information that can be useful. Relay task list, that will give you a little thing down here below the map that's going to show you like reminders whether you have all the keys, things like that. But the guide will also help you with that. So it's up to you which one you want to do. And then we have combat. We're going to want Wham. And I believe Wham will install Smart Stasis for us as well, but let's see what it does. Yeah, it did Bat Brain for us as well. Okay, so with Wham, once you have that installed, what you're going to want to do, and it tells you right here, we're going to want to add this to our CCS. So let's go ahead and do that real quick before we forget. And we'll just delete those, and we'll go consult Wham Ash save. And make sure that the drop down here is set to custom combat script. You can make other scripts and you can add other stuff if you want it to do other things, but basically you just leave it at consult Wham. That's going to work for most fights for you. Alright, so let's look at the relay section briefly here. There's a lot of different choices here for stuff, but one thing that I'm going to go ahead and install is Enhanced Inventory Spoilers. It's going to display information about all the items in our inventory below its name, so you basically you'll know before you use something what it's going to do, like food, things like that. So universal recovery, we do have to do some managing here to get that set up, so we're going to type this into the CLI. And just make sure you check these other things as well. Here for Smart Stasis, we don't actually need to put that in there. as WAM takes care of it. WAM ties into Smart Stasis. zlib is something that installed on its own while we were installing WAM. That's a library that's used for a lot of different things. And detective solver is something that we can call. Like we can call it from the CLI, but what I do is actually set up my preferences. So let's go back into preferences and we'll go to automation. And what we're going to do here is on login, we'll do the detective solver. And when the king is freed, we'll do the snapshot. You can just click this and pick the script that you want, or you can type it in. And let's go ahead and do the detective solver post ascension as well. And then if you have something like the Shrine to the Barrel God, you'll notice that you get a ton of barrels that you have to smash. If you don't like having to manage that, you can always create a little script to take care of that for you. I have a little script. I think I stole it from somebody. I'm not sure. I don't really remember. But basically, I just run it between adventures, and it takes care of smashing all those barrels for me so that I don't forget. And what you can do for that is you can create your little script, name it something like post adventure, and have something like this in it. And you can put other stuff in here too, but I just have that to just break barrels, and that does its job pretty well. And we'll just got a lot of windows going here. We'll put that in there as post adventure. Alright, now we're going to want to change a few other things in here real quick. Let's go back to the general tab. And just double check. Okay, I think we're good here. Item acquisition, buy items from stores whenever needed. You can do buy items with tokens at Coin Masters whenever needed, so like quarters to get gauze garters, things like that. Buy items from the mall whenever needed. We'll want that checked. Obviously that will only work when you're in Aftercore. And then you have a few things here. So if you are going to eat lasagna and you have a potion of the field gar, you'll want to have that, use it automatically. Wear tuxedos when appropriate, drinking martinis. And then if you have the Mayo Clinic, you may want that as well. Session logs, you can have session logs to record all kinds of things. If you ever want to keep track of all that stuff, like tracking your ascension, things like that. Okay, so let's go back down to in Ronin. This also includes in Hardcore. So let's just go ahead and check everything. And then you can have, if you have any tomes, if you want to do summons, you can set that here to automatically do it. I'm going to just set it to do resolutions and summon Alice's army cards. I prefer to keep the tomes myself, so I can choose which ones I want to do since you're limited on tome usages in Ronin. And then harvest, you can set what you want it to harvest from your garden if you have a garden. So if you wanted to harvest cornucopias, or if you wanted to wait till it's a megacopia, you can set that here. I just leave that at harvest nothing. And then you have after Ronin. After Ronin, you'll notice that the tomes disappeared. It's going to just automatically summon the tomes that are summonable, like the Smiths, but the Tome of Clip Art summoning you'll still have to do yourself because those do have to be picked manually. And then we'll check everything again. And then we have always. And then you have the daily deeds. These are configurable to some extent. There's quite a bit of other stuff here that you can change. in this whole section, but we're going to not worry about that for now. What we're going to do right now is click this little refresh icon here, and that's now going to show us what scripts we have available to configure or to use. Wham, it says not to use, so don't do that. So guide, what you can do anytime that you open up the Relay browser, just go ahead and click the drop down and hit guide, and that's going to open up the guide, and it'll open up over here in this pane unless you have a chat window open, in which case it'll just do it next to it. So once that loads, you'll have this over here showing you all the various tasks available to you, and if you have certain items of the month, it'll show you things to do with that as well. And it will have all your resources down here, even figures out calculate the universe for you, shows you what tome summons you have available, everything like that. Then if we go back up here and we go to OCD DB Manager, that's going to bring up this window, which it will probably take a moment to load. Alright, there we go. So the first time you run it, you're going to see this warning here, all item information is corrupted or missing. But that's because we're running it for the first time. So go to the Add Items tab, and you're going to see everything that you have in your inventory. And you can go through each thing and set what you want to do whenever you run the script. So we can choose to either put it in the mall, auto sell it, send it as a gift to somebody, stick it in the client stash. If it's a craftable, we can choose what we want to craft it into, or put it in our display case, or just have Mafia give you a reminder saying, hey, you need to do something with this. And that's going to take quite a bit of time to configure the first time, and then what you want to do is each time that you break the prism, before you ascend and before you run the script, go ahead and just hit that again, and any new items that you have will pop up in there, and you can choose which actions you want to do with that. And then if you have configured it in the past, you will have settings for that in the data folder. So you'll see we have OCD default, KBay, stock. Let's hit save all, and we're going to now have one called OCD data and then your character name. So if you have a different installation of this, that is something that you can back up. And like for example, I've already done that whole process before on a different character, and for this same character on a different installation. So I'm gonna just copy that one over here and replace the file. And then if we run that script again, and we may have to refresh it. Alright, we'll probably have to reload Mafia to get that to take, so let's go ahead and just close that out. And then we'll reopen it. And you'll notice here you have these nice little check boxes here, save password and breakfast. Breakfast is going to basically do the stuff in the automation. So you can check that to do that on login. And that's a nice little thing to keep. Like for example, it visits the hermit and gets your clovers for you, does all the other stuff. Alright, so we're reloaded, and let's go ahead and go back into OCD DB Manager and see if that's now, yeah, it now has all our items in the database. So we have 2,774 items in the database. So I just wanted to make sure that you could see here, you can go to inventory check, and that's going to check what you currently have in inventory and tell you what you have set as the action. And then you can also go to edit database, and this is going to be broken up to different tabs. Everything that you have to go into the mall, everything you have set as keeping it, everything for using, crafting, so on. So you can easily check to see what you have Like for some reason I've set all these things to go into the clan stash at some point. And so it's a good thing to check now and then, just to make sure that you're not putting certain things in your display case that you don't want to put in there. Alright, so aside from those scripts, there's a few other useful ones, and you can always go to the KoLMafia forums as well and see what other stuff you can install. You'll have turn burning scripts, relay override scripts, buff upkeep scripts, things like that, informational under turn burning scripts. Most of these you're going to find over here anyway, and there's a few that we're going to want to have, like the briefcase script, and actually I don't see that in here. Yeah, it may not actually be in there, but typically what you'll see is when you go to these different scripts here, they'll actually have an installer link on there. So like we have the time spinner for our future solver, and you have this little bit of code here. We just copy that, paste it into the CLI, hit enter, and that will install. And this one will do your far future visits in the time spinner for you. So if you want to get like a shot of Kardashian Jinn, you can just do far future shot. If you want the tea, you can do far future food or tea. Or if you just wanted to run your far future visits until you get all the different endings, the optimal ones, you can do far future none, and that will run through it and do the optimal solution for each different scenario. And you can see it runs through, and we earn some more medals. There we go, yay. So let's see. Yeah, I don't actually see the briefcase one right offhand, but you can always Google it. And we have the first link here, and there's the SVN code for that. And that one is pretty useful, and it actually tells you how to use it here. So what I do is I just run briefcase unlock when I first ascend, and that opens up the briefcase for you and charges the flywheel and all that other stuff. Alright, so now that we've got all that stuff installed, what we can do is when we go to adventure in an area, you'll see this button up here. So you have various buttons here that basically just automate things that you use quite a bit. So let's say that I decide to do lunging thrust smack. That's now going to appear up there in the script buttons. Lunging. Or if you just do script, if you have a CCS installed, like we do here, that's going to use WHAM to do the fight. Nice thing about WHAM is that it automatically does the correct actions depending on what the monster is. So if it's a ghost and you have the Protonic Accelerator pack, it will automatically do that for you. It will bust the ghost. It even uses the meteor skills to de-level if it needs to, things like that. That's about the extent of what I use to automate things. People are always like, oh, Totentons, what do you use to automate your ascensions? Well, I don't actually automate my ascensions. That's generally just doesn't work very well if you're trying to do speed. And as you can see in my videos for doing my 2-day hardcore standard runs, pretty much everything you have to do yourself. But you can automate somewhat, like with Mafia here. What you can do is you can choose what area you want to adventure in. Like if we want to do the Valley of ROFL MFAO, you can do that. And you can set what you want to have be your goal. So if we want the 64735 scroll and a lowercase n, you can set that here and choose how many adventures you want to spend on it. I've already gotten that scroll, so I'm going to clear that one out. So we want a lowercase n. We'll go ahead and just set 20 adventures, check that, hit begin, and all conditions are satisfied, so it stops immediately. But it will run until it gets that goal. You don't have to have a goal set either. You can just set that and not check this and go with it, and it's going to then run all those adventures. It will abort if you get beaten up, if you have things set properly to do that. And you can of course watch the CLI and see what's going on. And if you need to stop immediately because something's going wrong, horribly wrong, just hit escape, and it will say, you're on your own, partner. Click here to continue in the relay browser. We already have the relay browser open, so we'll just go ahead and hit the map, and that will take us into the fight. And then we can do whatever we need to do. If we need to manually finish the fight, like that monster's too difficult, we need to de-level it and then kill it, you can do that. So you may be wondering, so we've configured this OCD thing, now how do I use it? All you do is, here in Mafia, you're going to have all these different menu options. Well, we have scripts. You can hit scripts, and you'll see all your different scripts here. Some of these aren't meant to be run from this particular drop-down, but some are. Basically, you'll need to read the instructions for each script as you install it to see. But for OCD inventory control, you just hit scripts, you run it, and it's going to go through, and it's going to start crafting whatever you want crafted, and if it needs to buy something to craft it, it will, assuming you have things configured properly. It's going to start stocking stuff in the mall. I don't want it to keep going just yet, so I'm going to hit escape and stop it. But once it finishes, it's going to tell you what it anticipates your income from all that to be. It's not actually how much money you're getting or meat you're getting from running it just now. It's if all that stuff sells, what you will get. So that is a useful thing to get. Anytime that you install a new script, also make sure you hit refresh menu if it's not showing up here. Like we had the Far Future that we installed and the briefcase, and they weren't showing up there. But once we hit refresh menu, they did. Alright, so something else you can do here, type in help, and you'll see a bunch of different options here of commands that you can run in the CLI, and basically how to use them. So if you want, you can just do commands straight from here. Like for example, if we have the witches set and we want to get the daily buff that you get from doing the challenges, we can type that. You can automatically get a witches buff until all the puzzles are solved. Let's see. Oh, we get it right away. So I don't know why that didn't just work right offhand, but I don't use it that way anyway. I usually just go straight in there. But some other things that are nice is you have undercut, and that will reprice all your stuff in the mall if you don't have it priced properly. So sometimes I'll just dump stuff in there and I'll have it all priced at the max, and I can run that, and that's going to reprice it all to be something a little more reasonable, so that it might actually sell. We have burn is another good one. Like for example, I use this all the time when I'm doing the sea, doing the gladiator path. You don't want to fight the final boss there with any MP at all. Or, you know, before rollover, you might want to do this as well. But so you just type in burn 0, and it's going to go through and it's going to cast a bunch of stuff to get your MP down as low as possible. If you just type in burn 17, that's not going to do anything. Burn all, that doesn't tell you. Just do burn 0. zlib vars is another one that you'll want to do. This is all the different variables. If you run that, you gotta type it properly, but if you run that, it's going to show you all the different things that you can set. So like for example, when you run wham is going to automatically consult the Batman settings here, and it's going to use smart stasis. So you see Batman is set to attract Blooper, Dairy Goat, Zombie Walters, Dirty Old Lick, and Violent Fungus. We don't necessarily want it to do that, so we can change that. Basically what that means is if you have olfaction, it's going to olfact those monsters, but I'd rather not olfact all of those. I don't use the blooper generally, and the zombie waltzers I don't really care about either. And maybe I want to olfact something else, like the Green Ops hippie soldier. You could do that. If you don't type the name properly, it's going to say none. So obviously we didn't type that in properly. That's not the real name. Greens Ops, yeah, idiot. There you go. So yeah, make sure you're not doing typos in there. And then you also have Batman Yellow, and that's stuff that will yellow ray automatically. So if we don't want to yellow ray those things, and that's something that I always get rid of because I want to do that manually. So I just set it to the Orcish Frat Boy Spy and leave it as that. Because the harem girl, usually I can get my item drops up enough to get it anyway. I don't mind generally to get the ore. So depending on how you do it, you want to configure it to match what you do. So we also have settings for the OCD script up here that you can use, or you can just do it from the script up there. That's just another option for how to do it. And then for WAM, you can change how many rounds it's going to run, whether it's going to always continue, stuff like that. Any script that you install that uses zlib is going to add stuff to that. So like if you were to install the C, that has a bunch of stuff in there that is going to show up under those vars. So just make sure you check that. If there's ever any setting that doesn't show up in this drop down up here and you're like, how do I change that? Check your zlib vars. You know, it's probably going to be in there. Another example is that you have the scripting of a new life script here by Bale, and that one's pretty useful. So we can install that, and that's going to basically run some common tasks once we ascend. And of course, you didn't notice what I'm doing here in the CLI is I'm just hitting the up button. Just like if you're used to a command line interface, you can hit up, and it's going to go and highlight your previously used commands. So we can hit that, and we'll see what new vars we have in here. Okay, we actually didn't get any for that. It may be in here as well, so let's check. Nope. If they don't show up, then just run the script the first time and let it configure itself. And of course, make sure that you put that in under automation. And the easiest way, if you don't want to type it in, is just to highlight it there. That's worth noting. If for some reason you can't find the settings for something, usually you can also check here under data, and you'll find a lot of different stuff here. So you can basically just check there for the specific. So I'm going to show you the character snapshot script. I like to run this, as I said earlier, like once I break the prism, and it will run through. And it will take a few moments, but once it does run, it's going to give you this URL. You can click that and it will load up in your default browser, and this gives you little notice here of when it was generated, and then you can go through and you can see what all you've got for skills. It's useful for if you're trying to keep track of what you're doing, like if I'm trying to get all the Disco Bandit skills permed, I can see where I'm at on that. You can also go through, see what tattoos you have, and Ascension rewards, like all these things. If you're trying to get everything, you can see where you're at with that. You can even go down to, and this will take a minute to load, but you can go down to see what all you've crafted for cocktail crafting, food, meat pasting. So if you're trying to get all this stuff, you can quick and easily see what you've got so far, what you still need to do, and usually most of these are links that you can click on, and they'll show you what you need to do to get that. It just loads right up what is in the cold front wiki, so you can see, oh, I need to add sandpaper to the Crimbo Carol chapter 1 if I want to get that. They aren't always links. Like if you go up to the tattoos, the tattoos aren't for whatever reason, so those you'll have to search for in the cold front page yourself if you want to find it. But it does keep track of all your different skills, and that's pretty much the most useful one. The difference here is yellow is soft core permed, green is hardcore permed, and white, of course, is not permed. Skills that you currently have in this run but haven't been permed at all will be white. And then if you go all the way down to the bottom, it's going to give you a collector's score. It'll tell you how much karma you have. Monster manual, it'll show you that. And this one is like consumption, what you've consumed. So like something I like to do is just every run before I ascend, by entering the gash, I just pick something that I haven't drank yet, and I overdrink it first before I enter the gash. So that's something that's kind of fun. So that's pretty useful. And just go into your preferences, go into automation, and just have it run when you free the king. That's when you break the prism. It's pretty easy. I don't recommend doing it while you're in run. That's why I have it set as when I free the king, because it's best to use it in after core. It might even be best to do it like before you enter the gash. That way you have your storage all emptied out. So that's really about all you really need to do for configuring it. Now, just familiarize yourself with this. You have a lot of different options here. We have adventure, which we've already seen. You have your overview that tells you what you've done on this session. We have choice adventures, and that new life script that we just ran basically sets these choices as what's optimal for your path. But you always want to make sure that you have those set appropriately for whatever you're doing. So like the hidden city, we want to have these set to fight spirit or get cursed, fight spirit, relocate pygmy janitors, fight spirit to get binder clip or fight accountant, and so on and so forth. So you'll see that referred to quite a bit in the other videos that I do about how to actually do your runs. I'll talk about what choices you need to have in there. You always want to make sure you have those set appropriately depending on the situation. So if we're in aftercore and we're trying to burn turns in the office, we may want to change that to skip adventure, but you'll want to make sure that if you automate turns there next time that you change that to the correct thing. If you're manually doing the turns, it's not going to automatically choose that choice. What you'll see is, and I'll actually just go and show you here in the office, and this may take a few turns to get the non-combat, but what you'll see is it'll highlight the choice that you've set there as the default, and it's basically just saying, hey, this is what you want to pick. So since we're in aftercore, this stuff isn't really applicable, but normally what you'll see is if you haven't gotten the binder clip yet, raid the supply cabinet, will have a little arrow next to it. If we have the full file, we've already got the binder clip, you'll see it on knock on the boss's office door. Alright, so the big one here is mood setup. You're going to want to define some moods. What I do is I have my default, and we'll actually, what we'll do is we'll just take, let's see, yeah, we'll take most of these and we'll just add them to our mood. And then you can add whatever effects you need to have on top of that. Sonata of sneakiness at entry. If we just do autofill here, it's just going to take everything that we have and it's going to add it to it. And then once we have a good mood set, we'll want to have different versions of it. So we'll want to have, besides this version, which is going to give us minus combat, we'll want to have a version that's plus combat. So you hit copy, and then you find a new name for it, and then we'll delete that, and we'll put in the ones that we want. And then what you can do is anytime you need to switch back and forth, you just switch and you hit execute and it will run it. And then you can have different moods for different things. So like what I normally do is I'll have a mood for after level 13, after we've hit level 13, to drop the monster level. And so where you're going to find these is over here, back in our Mafia folder. Go into settings and you'll see your moods there. So if you ever need to back up your moods, or like say somebody gives you a file with their moods, you can change the character name to yours and put it in there. So I have this file from my normal installation where I have all my different moods, and I can just copy that over that one. And so we'll actually do that real quick here. We'll want to close out Mafia first, and then we'll just copy that file over. So we've got the mood copied over. So here's what I recommend you have. I have one for After Core, just to buff a bunch of stats so that I can do like the clan dungeons and stuff, and then I have one for the C, which basically does the same thing, but also includes like fishy and stuff like that. And then I have my default plus combat, my default minus combat, and then I have a level 13 version of both that just basically drops the monster level so that we don't hit level 14 before we hit the sorceress. So what you want to do for your mood is any of the cheap like level 1 skills for each of the classes that are buffs, you want to add those in there because they're really cheap to maintain. And then what I do is the Bengal Balm and the Hairspray. It's a cheap muscle and moxie buff, and then of course your monster level skills to boost that up, and then any of your minus combat stuff, so Sonata, sneakiness, and smooth movements. So just have those set up as your defaults. And then the plus combat is going to be exactly the same, just deleting those and adding in the Carl Weathers and then the Musk of the Moose instead. And you can back up your mood files if you ever need to. I could probably I'll just include this in the description, a link to a mood file, and then you can just delete which skills you don't have yet and use that for your own installation. And then I'll just provide a list in the description here of which scripts I use so that you can refer to that more easily when you go to do your own. But just make sure that when you do install these scripts, you read the description and follow any of the instructions there on what to do with it. So that's basically it on what you need for Mafia. You can explore some of these other things, like you have the gear changer, makes it easy to change what gear you're using, and then you have the modifier maximizer. That's real useful for basically maximizing whatever you need, like combat initiative, things like that. Those things you'll want to just kind of explore and figure out the best way to do it. You also have skill casting, and this will allow you to cast skills. It'll show you your active effects, what recovery items you have here, and then your purchases tab, which basically searches them all for you. It will include NPC stores, so if you search for something simple like frilly skirt, it's going to show you the NPC store, the Degrassi Knoll Bakery and Hardware store, and it will also show you any of the stores in the mall that have that as well. You can limit how many searches it shows you up here, so if you don't want to have a bunch, if you do, you can do this. Limit purchases is just going to limit it to however many you tell it to do. So we can hit purchase here, and then we can tell it how many to purchase, And that's basically the extent of that one. Here's your item manager, and then that basically gives you a neat little interface here. Makes it easy to craft stuff because you can go into creatable, cookable, mixable, and you can see what all is available to create, and you can just basically do it with a button click. If it fails, it'll tell you. And in this case, I've already used the source terminal today on my other installation, and of course this one doesn't know that. So it tried to do it and then failed. And then you have your storage here. That's going to be Hank's. You can just hit empty to empty it out when you start. And then general is a place where you can just search for whatever you need and then use it if you need to. But if you have usable stuff, that will all show up over here. So general I usually use for auto selling. You can sort here by what is the highest auto sell price to lowest, and it makes it easy to sell things like Jocko Homo's head. You can auto sell that. But of course, if you set up your OCD inventory control properly, you won't have to worry about that. So one other thing here is the daily deeds. Once you hit that, this window is going to come up. What I leave it on is this window, the daily deeds window. That's going to show you all the commonly used tasks for daily use, like the Chateau desk, deck of every card. This is customizable, so just go into the preferences and then daily deeds, and you can add things to it. It has built-in deeds here and then the current deeds here. So if there's something specific you're looking for, like the source terminal, we can add those, and you can put where you want them in the list. So if we want it all the way down at the bottom, we can move it down there. Shrine to the Barrel God, deck of every card, so on and so forth. You can remove stuff that you don't want to have in there, and of course make sure you look through this list to see what all you do want to have. But once you add it to the list, it's going to then show up. You can see the source terminal educate showed up right here where I plopped it to. These settings you can also save the file to backup. It's going to be under prefs, and they can be either global or character specific, so you can have different preferences for different characters if you have more than one. And that would be basically all these things here. SVN here, I'm just going to touch on briefly. This is something that you can set to update the installed projects on login if you want to. Otherwise, you can just do it manually when you need to by typing in SVN update in the command line interface. And that will make sure that everything is up to date with the most recent release of that, assuming that the authors actually put it on SVN. If they don't, for some scripts, like say you have the 70s volcano and you use the volcano script, I don't remember if that one's on SVN, so that may not update. Some scripts early on will be updated quite frequently, so having that SVN update on login can be useful, like the briefcase script was changing quite a bit during the early days of the briefcase when it was still being spaded. So that is one example of something that you would want to have the updates done on login, but you don't always want to do that. Other tabs here, you got Coin Masters. That is going to be like the Quartermaster during the war, Dime Master. These just give you an easy interface for buying or selling these things. So like if you have Alice's Army stuff and you want to just sell those to get credits, you can go to Game Shop, highlight them all, and you can either hit multiple where it's going to ask you how many you want to sell. You can do exactly one where it just sells one of each, all but usable, so anything that you can't use, or just max possible, now those sell them all. And then that should show you what stuff you have available that you can buy from that vendor as well. So we have all these different items we can get. And we have Clan Manager, KoLMafia chat, purchase buffs that in Aftercore can be helpful because you can just click that and you get a quick interface. You can get what kind of buff pack you want. who you want to get it from, and then you can just request it, and it does that automatically for you. If you don't have those skills, or you don't have a lot of MP or whatever reason, that's an easy way to get them in Aftercore or outside of Ronin. Obviously, you can't do that in Ronin or during Hardcore. And then, of course, there's Sweet Synthesis and Familiar Trainer. You can use those if you want. Sweet Synthesis, I don't use this interface too much myself. I just rely on the modifier maximizer to do it for me. It'll bring it up when it's a valid option for whatever choice you've got there, like muscle. It'll bring it up, Sweet Synthesis strong, and then it'll just do it for you. It'll even buy the stuff that you need to do the effect if you're not in Ronin or Hardcore. So that is basically everything for setting up KoLMafia the way that I do it. I do have a few other scripts that I use normally, just stuff for like certain like items of the month or zones that I don't have installed on this one right away because I don't always use them. So this is just the basic setup. So let me know in the comments if you have any other questions or anything that you need me to clarify or anything else you're wondering about with Mafia, and I'll try to respond with the answer in a timely fashion. But definitely feel free to hit the like button if this helps you out, and let me know if there's any other videos that you want me to make, and I'll do my best to get them up. And then also make sure you hit the subscribe button so you get notified of any other videos that I come out with for KOL in the future. So that's it. Thanks for watching.